amongst the people of India. Abhedananda was away from India for about a quarter of a century, excepting a brief visit in 1906. This prolonged stay abroad had naturally made him a legendary figure to his own countrymen. Though his name and fame had by this time spread over the two continents, yet his own countrymen were nevertheless inquisitive for this great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, even though they had no precise knowledge about the enormity of his work in the West. Abhedananda, too, had very little idea about the conditions then prevailing in India, nor he was fully acquainted with the social, political, and economic changes during the long period of his absence. It was therefore quite natural with him that on his return to India, he wanted in the first instance to be amongst his own people with a view to obtaining a correct picture about their conditions, and also to infuse them with new life. It could be inferred from his various utterances during this period that Swami Abhedananda too had his own plan of campaign, as Swami Vivekananda had after his return from the West. After a week's stay at Jamshedpur, he returned to the Belur Muth, where life brought him back to incessant demands upon him. People flocked to him there at all hours of the day, seeking his instruction and blessing, and the privilege of taking the dust of his feet. And whenever the Swami came to Calcutta for a brief sojourn from Belur, he stayed in Balaram Babu's house in Bagh Bazar, where he and the monastic members of the Ramakrishna order always found a ready welcome and warm hospitality. To the sons of Sri Ramakrishna, it was no ordinary house. It was looked upon as a shrine, the Balaram Mandir, due to its association with the Master. On such occasions, it was the scene of the gatherings of devotees and visitors from all parts of the city. Whether it was at Belur or at Calcutta, various striking conversations used to take place on the education that India needs, and he would traverse the whole ground in its different aspects in regard to men, women, and the masses, putting forward practical suggestions by which it could be conduced on national lines after the ancient models continued with the modern methods. Then at another time he would speak about the uplift of the women in India, which was of urgent need and without which all round national awakening could not result in a success. It so happened that one day when an educationist raised his objection to female education on a mass scale, Swami Abhedananda gave the following opinion, which only he could give. Don't you realize that half of humanity is woman? You have neglected the womankind, and therefore you are downtrodden today. You must remember that the women, your wives and sisters and mothers, are the mothers of the race. They are the mothers of the children that are going to take your place in the future. Unless the women are educated, how can the children be educated? In America, the women are more educated than men. There they are the leaders of the society. Our country has produced great women, and the time has come when we must also produce other women like them. Everybody present on that occasion was greatly impressed with these words, and they were all the more pleased to hear this from the lips of a sannyasi. Again, on another occasion, when he spoke of the masterminds of India, those who grouped round the Swami would invariably feel a stirring of the soul, as if they were in the very presence of the spirit of the one in question. Of these constant meetings and conversations, it is impossible to make full record. It will only suffice to say that these conversations reflected his power of infusing a wonderful spirit of faith and courage into the minds of those who had the privilege of attending. Shortly after the Swami's arrival in Calcutta, the birthday anniversary of Swami Vivekananda went off. It was celebrated as usual at Belur, but the fact that Swami Abhedananda himself was to take part in the festival drew large crowds to the monastery. He gave a stirring lecture before a huge gathering, and this was his first Bengali lecture. He began his speech slowly, but once he came into the middle of the theme, words flowed in torrents, and the sweetness of his voice and the directness of his appeal impressed one and all. He was never tired of speaking about this, his beloved leader, whose premature death had left a permanent void in his mind. On this particular occasion, he sought to explain the national significance of Vivekananda's life and work. As he said during the course of the speech, all of you know him to be a great sannyasin, but how many of you know that to reassert India's essential self and leave the great stream of national life, strong in a fresh self-confidence and vigor, to find his own way to the ocean, was the meaning of his sannyasin? For his was preeminently the sannyasin of the greater service. To him, nothing was dearer than the future prosperity of India. Try to realize India of his dreams, and you will then perhaps realize the true greatness of Swami Vivekananda. While at Belur one day, he presided over the prize-giving ceremony held at a local school. The young students who received prizes from his hand also received his blessings. His love for the students was unbounded, for he believed that the future of India depended largely on the students and the younger generation of people. As an instance for his love for the younger generation, we might mention here the following account. Once a group of boys, most of them teenagers, came to Belur to invite Swami Abhedananda in a meeting organized by them. The place was not far from the monastery. The leader of the group went straight to the Swami and asked him to preside at their meeting. Abhedananda consented to preside at the boys' meeting. Some of his Guru Bhais were taken by surprise when they found him gladly accepting the invitation. When it was a case with the younger folks, he, the man with a mighty personality, was easily accessible. It was at this meeting when some of the boys gathered around him for his blessing. He is reported to have uttered these words: "Life is a quest for higher ideals and a strife for nobler aims. Let this be the motto in your lives. I have nothing to say beyond this." The boys of our times would do well to make this as their motto of their lives if they want to become a man in the true sense of the word. This was the dream of both the patriot saints of modern India, Vivekananda and Abhedananda. One day he visited the shrine of Kalighat, where he spent some time worshipping the Divine Mother with utmost devotion, as was his nature. As soon as the news spread to the people of the locality, they flocked to the Kali temple to have a glimpse of Abhedananda, about whom they had heard so much. The whole temple area was astir with excitement, such was the magnetic spell of his personality. On entering inside the precincts of the temple where the statue of the Divine Mother stood, he touched the pedestal and bowed down his head. It was a sign for sight that the great Vedantic monk of international reputation, standing silently in utmost reverence before the Divine Mother. It is difficult for us to conjecture what were the feelings that were there surging in his heart. Did it occur to him at that great moment that 56 years ago was at the grace of this Divine Mother that he was born as the son of a devoted and pious lady who had prayed to the Mother to bless her with a religious-minded son, and that prayer was granted? Physically, it was Swami Abhedananda who stood before the deity in mute silence, but spiritually it was an illumined soul that stood there in a transcendental mood in which both the form and the formlessness lose their respective identity. The temple at Kalighat had seen many saintly visitors, but the visitor on that particular day made such an impression on the minds of the spectators which was an event by itself. In the middle of February 1922, Swami Abhedananda, accompanied by Swami Shivananda, left Calcutta for a short trip to East Bengal. He arrived at Narayanganj on the next day, whence they went to Dhaka by car and stayed at the Ramakrishna Mission ashrama there. And here it should be mentioned that Abhedananda came to Dhaka on being specially invited by the organizers of the Swadeshi exhibition, the opening ceremony of which was duly performed by him on 21st February. Before the inaugural ceremony of the exhibition, he had a week's time in his hand, and during this period, he visited all the interesting spots, including the Abhoy Ashrama, where he was given a cordial welcome by the members of the famous Swadeshi institution. One day he went to the residence of a devotee to participate in a music conference. On the same day, when he opened the exhibition, he was given a grand public reception, which was attended by all the leading people of Dhaka. It was an inspiring gathering consisting of more than 3,000 citizens. In reply to the welcome address, he gave a lecture for about an hour, which was received with tremendous applause. On the next day, the students of the Dhaka University gave him a reception which was presided over by Professor Harbach, the then Vice-Chancellor of the Dhaka University. The speech he delivered there mainly dealt with the needs of the students. Never forget that the student community of the country is the salt of our people and the builders of tomorrow. It would be an unfortunate thing if the salt ever loses its fervor, he said. This was the main burden of his speech to the students. The next day he went to Narayanganj, where the citizens, mostly business people, gathered in a large meeting to offer their welcome to Abhedananda. In both the public speeches at Dhaka and Narayanganj, he spoke about the growing activities of the Ramakrishna Mission and urged upon the people to emulate the ideals preached by Swami Vivekananda, which he stressed more or less the ideals of Sri Ramakrishna, whose unbounded love for humanity the world has yet to realize. Incidentally, he also referred to some of the experiences gathered by him in the West. From the contemporary reports, we gather that the people of Dhaka and Narayanganj included the students that had greeted Abhedananda almost with the same fervor as was noticed 21 years earlier when Vivekananda visited East Bengal. Everyone was eager to get a sight of the Swami while at Dhaka. Apart from public engagements, he was besieged by numerous visitors. To these he gave instructions at all hours of the day, particularly for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. More than 100 people attended these informal meetings daily, and Abhedananda was never tired of speaking to them, for he too was equally eager to know the people and their needs and aspirations. Conscious as he was now of his role as a teacher, Abhedananda, since his return to India, took immense pain and care to understand the problems that then surrounded the lives of his countrymen. No wonder, therefore, that both at Dhaka and Narayanganj, all who came to see him were impressed by his gracious manner and charming personality. In the testimony of some elderly persons, Abhedananda resembled in many respects Vivekananda, and they found much to their surprise and delight that the former's teachings were equally full of a living faith and devotion, and infused with the same intense vitality and power. As a result, hundreds were led to make a diligent study of his message and his plans for the amelioration of India. I wish I could do something for you. These words spoken to the Dhaka students reflect the loving kindness of Swami Abhedananda for his countrymen. Both the Swamis, Abhedananda and Shivananda, left Dhaka on 24th February for Mai Mensing. Here, both the sons of Ramakrishna laid the foundation of the ashrama, which subsequently came to be known as Maimen Singh, Sri Ramakrishna Ashrama. Here, too, students flocked to have some talks with Abhedananda. He discussed with them about the ideals of education. The citizens of Maimen Singh gave him a rousing reception, which was attended by a gathering of 3,000 people. He spoke to them for an hour and a half. After the meeting was over, students came to meet him at the palace of the Raja of Gauripur, where he was then staying as the guest. His conversation with the students and the other visitors lasted until the late hours of the night. Swami Shivananda stayed there in connection with the mission work, and Swami Abhedananda left Maimen Singh on the afternoon of the next day and returned to Calcutta, where an important public function was awaiting him. And on February 21st, he presided over the Vivekananda Memorial Meeting held at the Star Theatre. Two distinguished people addressed the meeting: the Honorable Narayan Iyengar, Mr. H.W.B. Moreno, who was the spokesman of the Anglo-Indian community. On March 5th came off the birthday festival of Bhagwan Sri Ramakrishna, which was duly observed at the monastery, where 16,000 people were provided with prasad. A fortnight later, Abhedananda participated in the Ramakrishna festival held at the garden house of Moni Malik. On his return journey, he visited the Ramakrishna orphanage at Kutigat in Baranagar, now known as the Baranagar Orphanage. So the Ramakrishna mission had become a patent force in less than 3 decades, and what little he has been able to see for himself since his return to India, it fully convinced him that the direction and purpose the mission had received from Vivekananda had not been in vain. Just as at the prime of his youth he went to the West at the call of his leader and spent the best portion of his life in giving shape to the dreams of Swami Vivekananda, so now at this advanced age he was to work for the regeneration of India, the plans for which have been laid down by the leader before he suddenly passed from the worldly scene. Who was to look after the legacy left by him? We might conjecture that such thoughts were now and then uppermost in the mind of Abhedananda, who understood India's need and aspirations just in the same manner as Vivekananda did. And in this respect, one was very close to the other. A great event of sorrow was now about to happen in the history of the Ramakrishna mission. The curtain was being rung down on the life of Swami Brahmananda, the chief architect of the Ramakrishna Movement mission since 1902. When he succeeded as the president of the order after the Mahasamadhi of Vivekananda. In fact, it was during the lifetime of Vivekananda that Brahmananda was made the virtual executive head of the order. The readers of the life of Sri Ramakrishna need not be told about the Master's own estimation of the stature of Swami Brahmananda, as once expressed by him in these words: "Rakal can rule a kingdom." It is also known to us that Vivekananda and his brother disciples took that utterance of the Master literally, and from that day Rakal Maharaj, the future Swami Brahmananda, came to be known as Raja to his brother disciples, which means royal, and a little later as Raja Maharaj to the whole organization. It was Vivekananda, the leader, who prepared the ground for Brahmananda in all possible ways. Sri Ramakrishna knew a vision the stature of his most favorite son, Rakal, who was a spiritual genius of the highest order. Though always indrawn in his mind, yet as everybody knows, the Swami Ramananda possessed a remarkable capacity for administration, and the growth and development of the Movement mission during the years 1902 to 1922 is a clear testimony to it. Both Rakal and Naren, that is Vivekananda, had been friends from their boyhood, and Swami Brahmananda had all along acknowledged Vivekananda's leadership, and Vivekananda too had great trust in Raja Maharaj. So it was quite natural, as everyone expected, that Ramananda would succeed Vivekananda, and so he did when the latter left the soil of the earth in 1902. The history of the organization during the post-Vivekananda days is essentially the history of the achievements of Swami Brahmananda as the president of the order, assisted by the Swamis Premananda and Sharadananda. For full 2 decades, Brahmananda remained the executive head of the order and guided efficiently the manifold activities of the organization. For a time, he became the living symbol of the order. But who then knew that the year 1922 would be the last year of his life? Swami Brahmananda returned to Calcutta on the second week of January 1922 from his Madras trip. It was on the fateful day of February 25th that he was attacked with cholera, from which he duly recovered. But from that time onwards, he lay on his sickbed at Balaram Babu's house in Calcutta for undergoing treatment for virulent diabetes. As soon as the news of his illness spread all over, the Gurubhais hurried back to his bedside. Abhedananda went twice to Calcutta to see his ailing brother disciple, the Raja of the Ramakrishna order. And a strange thing happened on April 6th. Abhedananda was then having just a snap when he said that as Brahmananda lay on his sickbed, some sadhus were administering medicine to him while the master sat close by with his fixed gaze on his beloved son, Rakal. So Sri Ramakrishna had appeared before him, and in that very moment he again said that Ramananda has fully recovered. The entry in his own diary runs, April 6 saw in vision some sadhus administering medicine to Rakal, who was lying very ill. Ramakrishna was sitting at his bedside. Immediately, Rakal sat up healthy and strong and fully cured. But the next morning, Abhedananda, in the company of Miss Josephine MacLeod and the other brother monks, went to the residence of Balaram Babu to see Brahmananda. Here he is reported to have exchanged a few words with him. It seemed to Abhedananda that Rakal Maharaj was feeling extreme difficulty in uttering even a few words. The scene was painful to him, and as such he wanted to cure his beloved brother-disciple by his mental power. It was but an unmistakable natural expression of the sense of brotherhood of monks that was founded years and years ago at Anpur, before the living presence of Sri Ramakrishna. The determination on his part was therefore very much real and strong. At night, while Abhedananda was transmitting his thought currents to cure Maharaj of his maladies, it seemed to him that some unseen person told him, whoever desired to cure Rakal Maharaj, he would have to take upon himself the same disease. In this connection, he writes in his diary, while lying down, I was giving him a treatment, but I was told that his disease must be taken by the mental healer who would heal him. Day by day, Ramananda's condition deteriorated. Abhedananda used to visit him daily at the house of Balaram Babu. Everyone prayed fervently for his life, and the expert physicians were in attendance. But all attempts to bring him round failed, and on 10th April 1922, Swami Brahmananda entered into Maha Samadhi. It was a stunning blow to the whole organization, from which it took years to recover. By all accounts available to us, it was difficult for anybody to replace Swami Brahmananda, so far the administration of the order was concerned. His death, therefore, meant the end of an epoch. The next day, in the morning, his body was brought to Belur by a boat, and the last rites were duly performed. Swami Abhedananda, who stood at a little distance from the pyre, saw the body consumed by the flames. So this was the end of the play of the eternal companion that was Brahmananda. While he was staying at the Balur Muth, there was some difficulty for his accommodation, and as such, Swami Ramananda had suggested to him to have a new room built on the guest house for his own use. So before he left for Shillong, Abhedananda placed some money with one of the disciples, Swami Shankarananda, who had a new room built for him on the roof of the guest house at Balur. He left Calcutta for Shillong on April 24th, arriving there the next day. The scenic grandeur of the place fascinated him very much, and the climate appeared to him very refreshing. In this trip, he was accompanied by some younger monks who belonged to the order. He stayed there for 2 months, and the entire period was crowded with various public engagements, including his reception at the Quinton Hall, where Abhedananda gave a lecture on Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion. And one day he delivered another lecture for 2 hours at the local Hari Sabha on progressive Hinduism, which was attended by a large number of people. Among the notable people whom he met here were Suchari Devi, the daughter of Keshab Chandra Sen, and Maharani of Mayurbaj, and Chandra Roy, and other famous American geologists, Mr. Nightingale. The Swami sometimes went to the residence of Dr. Roy and had discussions with him on various subjects. Sometimes he would be entertained with tea at the residence of the noted physician. The main object of his visiting Shillong was to find out a location suitable for a center of the Ramakrishna mission. He delivered another interesting lecture on the message of Vedanta at the Quinton Hall. He left Shillong on July 1st for Guwahati. While he spent 2 months at the delightful hill station of Shillong, Abhedananda must have recalled the days when Vivekananda also visited the place for reasons of his health just a year before his death. Sir Henry Cotton was then the chief commissioner, with whom Swamiji had some interesting discussions about India and the solution of her problems. Abhedananda heard much about this noble Englishman who understood India's needs and aspirations better than any other English civil servant of those days. He was a great admirer of Cotton's historical writings on ancient India. The entire student community of Guwahati was present at the station to receive Swami Abhedananda. The arrangements for his stay there was also looked after by the students. Here, some priests of the Kamka Devi temple also came to meet him. The whole of the next day was spent with the visitors who flocked to see him and talk with him. In the afternoon, he gave a lecture on the eternal religion and the message of Vedanta. The deputy commissioner of Guwahati was present at the meeting, which was attended by a large number of the audience. Next, he proceeded to the famous pilgrimage, Kamkaya, where he visited the center of the mission and promised to present a few assets of his work to the ashram library, which he did after his return to Balur. Ramachari Sacha Chaitanya of Balur Muth has recorded the following of his visit to Guwahati. After his return from Shillong, Swami Abhedananda went to visit the temple of the goddess Kamka and the Vishta Ashrama and other spots of this pilgrimage. It was then high current in the river Brahmaputra, so it was not possible for him to go by boat to see the Vavrava. It was somewhat novel on the part of the Swami, who was a confirmed monist, to go on pilgrimage. But few knew that apparently, though he was a Vedantin, yet inwardly he was a great devotee. Everything associated with a place of pilgrimage appeared to him as holy. Even the dust of the place would be regarded as sacred. Though endowed with the highest spiritual realization, yet Abhedananda was found to sit before the goddess, worshipping her with grand scale. The personal deity must have then merged in his realization in the impersonal, as was the case with the great master Sri Ramakrishna. Everybody was taken by surprise to find him bathing in the kunda, the tank of fortune, which was nothing but a pond full of impure and filthy water. He not only bathed in the pond with utmost devotion of a pilgrim, but he also drank the water of the pond, holding a little quantity on his palm. He went round the temple along with the priests, chanting the mantras. In and around the Kamkya temple, there were certain spots associated with the 10 different forms of the Divine Mother, and it was extremely inaccessible for anybody. And so the Pandas, the priest, advised him not to risk to visit those places. But Swami Abhedananda was undaunted, and he visited all the 10 spots which were situated inside the caves and worshipped each and every deity with the help of a torchlight. It so happened that some of the caves had to be reached by him simply by crawling. The said brahmachari has recorded another incident which is nonetheless revealing and which should be mentioned here, just to show the true nature of Swami Abhedananda's spiritual soul. He said, "It so happened that while the Swami was receiving the address of welcome at a meeting at Guwahati, a devotee presented him a copy of a book written by an Englishman which strongly criticized the symbol worship of the Hindus. Some were very much surprised to find Swami Abhedananda supporting the views expressed by the author in that book, and it has naturally wounded their feelings. After a while, he expressed his eagerness to visit the Vashishta ashrama. He sent for the attendant and told him, 'Look here, we need not have our bath in the cold waters of the pond there, lest we catch cold. Let us be less enthusiastic in our devotion this time.' While on his way to the spot, he discussed the views of the said English author again and supported them emphatically, saying that opinions expressed by him were quite correct. The attendant and the other devotees felt very much hurt by this, but as soon as he reached the spot, we found him to be a different man. He presented a figure full of gravity and calmness. As he entered inside the ashrama in slow pace, everybody noticed him to be deeply absorbed in a meditative mood mixed with intense devotion. His every footstep infused a strange feeling in our minds. Then, coming to the banks of the Tradari, the confluence of the 3 rivers, he asked his attendant slowly if he had brought any clothes. The attendant replied in the negative. Clothes or no clothes, it seemed to matter little to him. At once he undressed himself and had his bath completely naked. He seemed to be in an ecstatic mood, as if seized by some divine feeling. After a while he told his attendant, 'One must have his bath at these places which are holy.' This was the first time we had seen his bath in the open air since his return to America. After the bath was over, he came out of the pond, completely wet, and put on his clothes. Later on, he visited minutely all the spots and places for a long time. The next morning, he went by a steamer to visit Ashwaranti. There were innumerable signs of horsehoof inscribed on the stone walls, which he observed with minute attention, as was his nature. Whenever he would be on pilgrimage, nothing of significance escaped his inquisitive glance. Besides religious aspects, every pace of the pilgrimage in India has a special significance from cultural and architectural points of view, which should never be missed. I never go to any place of pilgrimage just to see the idols there. I find equal interest in its architectural beauty as well as its cultural aspects. Thus remarked Abhedananda once to one of his disciples in Calcutta, who was then preparing to go for pilgrimage. During his stay at Guwahati, Abhedananda visited all the spots associated with the tantric culture, which once flourished in Assam. He left Guwahati on July 7th, accompanied by his attendants. We have seen that though Abhedananda had visited half of the world, including China, Japan, and Burma, Yet Tibet still remained unvisited. He must see the ancient land whence Buddhism flourished. He now began to make the necessary preparations for his journey to Kashmir and Tibet as soon as he reached Calcutta from his Assam tour. His Highness the Maharaja Jasingh of Alwar was a great friend and admirer of Swami Abhedananda. When he was staying at Shillong, Abhedananda received a message from the Maharaja which informed him that the Maharaja of Kashmir would be too glad to have Swami Abhedananda as his guest when he visits that place. So on reaching Calcutta, he made preparations for his intended journey to Tibet via Kashmir. This was Abhedananda's last important journey, which he undertook at the age of 56. A born traveler as he was, he never felt tired in responding to the call of the beyond. Tibet always loomed large in his vision, since he went to visit the Himalayan Tirthas in his youthful days. But to think of Swami Abhedananda undertaking a fresh pilgrimage to a far-off and almost insurmountable region like Tibet at the advanced age of 56 is just to think the greatness of an eternal traveler.